In this video, we're going to look at creating a multi-part model and how to manage that multi-part model and how to bring it all together finally in an assembly. Now we're going to create all the modeled parts, so we may end up doing this in at least two parts so that we can bring together the parts of an engine. We're going to do a rudimentary engine for this. So in this video, we will create a piston, connecting rod, and a crankshaft, and we may put some other pieces in there, but I think that will be the minimum of it. We'll create one copy of each, and we can make it a 2-cylinder, 3-cylinder, 4-cylinder, whatever we want to do once we have the first instances. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create a file, give it a name, and get started from there. For those of you who have been following along, you may have a startup macro that will allow you to create this file automatically. But I'm not going to do that because some people may not have done that, so I'm going to actually do it manually. And we'll create a new file, and we're going to create a part in that file, and we're going to create a body in that file. And the way we're going to organize this, we're going to actually save this file. We're going to save it as, I'm just going to call it small engine. I'm going to put it in my FreeCAD file. Small engine. And I'm going to save this body. I'm going to rename this body as piston, because that's the thing we're going to start with first. So for a piston, it's basically a cylinder with some holes in it, some cutouts. What I'm going to do, because we have the piston, where the piston rings go in, we have a couple of grooves. So I'm going to create the piston cylinder with a revolve. And to do that, I'm going to create a sketch. I'm going to create it on the XY plane. And I am going to create a cylinder shape. I'm going to do it with this guy. I'm going to go from here, I'm going to go out here, down a little bit like this, come in a little bit like this, down, out, down, across. And that's essentially my cylinder shape. So I'm going to close that and just create the revolve just to see what it looks like. So there we have our revolve. And a couple of things I noticed right away is we may want to hollow out the inside all in one go. So we could actually do that. So we'll go back to our sketch, say okay. Pop open my piston and pop open my sketch, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hollow out the inside. So I'm actually going to create that with a new piece here. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to come down to here, and then I'm just going to cut out the pieces that we don't want, like that. Going to zoom in there a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to make that one. I'm going to add that constraint. I didn't do well there. Should have already done that. There we go. And those two as well should be horizontal. And that looks good. And now I'm going to add some dimensions to it. So for my piston, I'm going to say it's 50 millimeters in diameter. So I'm going to take a dimension that goes from here to here, and I'm going to give that 25 millimeters. So now my piston is 25 millimeters in diameter. And then I'm going to align everything up with these guys. I just give them a vertical alignment. And I'm going to make that guy vertical. And then I want this to be about 4 mil thick. So I'm going to dimension this line to this one. And remember, I could hit this point and just do the dimension from there, but it would come out as a negative dimension because I'm in the negative side of this line. And I don't like that personally, so I'm not going to do that. So we're going to make this, what did I say, 4 mil, 5 mil, 4 mil thick. So that'll be 21. And of course we go inside out there because these guys are too far out. So what we actually want, and I'm going to zoom in there a little bit, what we actually want is for this to be over here like this. This guy to be over here like this. That should be vertical. And that should be vertical. And that should be aligned vertically too. And then we're going to give this a dimension here. We're going to call that we'll call that 3. We'll move that over to there so we can see it. And we're going to make that one and that one equal. So they're both 3 millimeters. And we're going to align this and this vertically. Did we already do that? I think we already did that. Yeah, that's vertical. I believe between the two, that 33 there is the vertical. Okay, so now we are going to finish up dimensioning. I think it would be good if this was 5 millimeters too, or 4 millimeters too. Got too many things selected. So we're going to go with 4 millimeters here. That will keep my width constant right around here. And then we probably want a depth here. So if we go with a depth of 2. And remember, there are lines, everything is all lining up. So that's starting to look good. What else do I need? I need some other dimensions here. I got to tell it what that distance is from there to there, or the overall distance. So I could go from here, give that a dimension, and we'll call that 33. And then I have 4 degrees of freedom, which are where these lines are pretty much. So I'm going to say this first one, I think I'm going to do it that way, give that a dimension, and make that 6. And we already know those are 3, so why don't we just make that and that equal. So now we have that. And this guy, we got 2 degrees of freedom left. And degrees of freedom are here and here. Let's see why they are free. We need a vertical on that guy. And why is this one free? Because we need a horizontal on that guy. And there we have it. Now we are fully constrained. And we're going to close that. And it should make our piston. It looks a little, to me, it looks a little bit squat. So I think what we're going to do is make that a bit longer. So again, we're designing as we go. I don't have a picture for this to work from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive this dimension up a bit Gonna call that 45, and then say close, and now it's looking a bit more like a piston. So that's a basic piston shape. And then one thing a piston has is there's always a hole in here along the side. So let's get this to stand up, shall we? There it is. I'm going to put a hole just in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a sketch. I'm going to do it on that plane there. And let's say, okay. I'm going to go back in here and turn my part back on so I can see where it is. I'm going to take this, I'm going to hit that guy so I can see. This is the sectional view, remember? We've used that before. I'm going to take a circle and I'm going to put it right around there. And I think I'll dimension that guy. So, because that's a hole, I'm going to dimension it as a diameter. And I'm going to make it 10 mil diameter. Seems like a good number. And then all I need to do is give it a height from there. So I'm going to just click on that one, click that guy, and we'll call that 10 as well. And that's fully constrained. So I'm going to say close to my sketch, and I'm going to say create pocket, symmetrical, through all, and there we have the hole through the piston. Now, if you ever looked at a piston, they're actually cast, and so there's all kinds of stuff inside here, but I'm not going to go to that detail with this. What we're going to do is we'll have a small end bearing that runs through there into the top of the conrod, the connecting rod. So for now, that will do for my piston, and we'll let that go. Okay, in the next one, we're going to create a connecting rod. So let's go from this part. We'll just create a body, and we're going to rename this body as conrod. So now our connecting rod is going to have a small end, a large end, and we just have to decide how big we want that to be. So let's go into a sketch. I'm going to sketch in this plane. I'll say OK. And we're going to basically make it, we'll do it on this line here, but we're basically going to make two circles. One's bigger than the other. And we will connect those with a line. I think we'll come out here and we'll go just a bit of an angle like that. And then we'll go from there to there. And that's basically the shape. Then what we have to do is decide what size everything's going to be. So again, we're going to go with a dimension for this. Oh, hang on, let me just do, I'm going to do a cutout here. So I'm going to actually cut this guy apart like this, and this. So that's the trim tool I just used to cut that out. And then I'm going to take this and that center line and put some symmetry on there. And I'm going to do the same with this. Put some symmetry on. And then I'm going to start dimensioning. So now I'm going to hit this guy, and 79 seems a bit too big. Our top hole was 10, so our bottom hole is going to be 20. So this could be maybe 50. And then this guy, so if the hole is 10, we can maybe make that 25. There we go. And now we want to bring these guys in a little bit, because we don't want all that extra like that. That's good. And then we're going to take this guy to this guy, and we're going to give it a dimension. And I'm going to make that 125. And I'm just going to get in here and tell this not to be so silly. There we go. I think we want to come out more like that. Maybe we'll put some radii in there, but that's fine the way it is. And we're going to give it a dimension between here and here. That's going to be 20. Remember, they're already symmetrical, so that will lock it up pretty good. And then this guy, we're going to make it 12. So that looks good. Now I just need to lock something up here. If you look, the whole thing is in free space, so we just need to lock one of these to here. So if I just go with that one, I can just use that guy, and we'll call that 60 for now. Move the whole thing down. So that's basically it. Then we're going to close that, and we're going to create a piece with that. Let's just have a look at that. I don't think 10 is too terrible for the thickness. With that size, maybe we'll go to 12. And you may be wondering, why didn't I put holes in this already? Well, the reason I didn't do that is because I want to put a little piece of embossing on there. So I'm going to emboss around this area a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to do it with a separate sketch. So here we go. I'll do that. And of course, we're not worried about where this all sits at the moment because we're going to assemble it. So when we assemble it, we can tell it where it needs to be in the world. One thing to note is that the piston is not joined to the conrod. So even though it appears like the conrod is going through the piston, it really isn't at the moment. That's not what's happening. So I'm actually going to turn off the piston for a moment, and then I'm going to create these embosses around here. So let's show you how we're going to do that. So go with sketch. Sketch is going to be on this plane again. Going to go turn my part back on because it keeps turning itself off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to include these diameters in my sketch because I want to be able to find those centers. So now you see the centers are actually on there. I just turned on this sectional view so I can see the center point. And now the centers on the outside of those circles have all shown up in this sketch so that I can literally just click on that center and I can decide where I want my embossing part to be. Something like that, something like that, and I think that'll do potentially. I guess we have to dimension them to see what we got here. So we know the hole's going to be 10 through the middle. So I'm going to go 16 with that guy. And I'm going to go, we know that one's going to be 20 through, so I'll go 35 with that, just for grins and giggles. And then I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to pad this sketch. And I'm going to do it symmetrical. And I'm going to make this 20, I think. That's good. So just an embossing out there. And say OK. And now I'm going to put the holes through it. So I'm going to create another sketch, also on the XY plane. Say OK. Turn back on my part. And I am now going to include that geometry. So it's that little box with the weird thing on top. Include that geometry and that geometry. And see the sectional view. Apparently it didn't include that geometry. So now I've included that geometry. And then I'm going to go and put the holes in. So I know the hole in the piston here was 10. I know the hole in that, well, I know the crankshaft diameter is going to be 20. So I'm going to dimension those two. Just need to zoom in there so I get the right hole. So that's going to be 10. And bear with me a second. And that guy is going to be 20. So one thing I will tell you, I am now using a trackpad. So, a trackball. So right now I'm using this trackball for the first time, and it is a little bit different. So if you see me struggling around a little bit, it's because I'm trying to get used to the trackball. That's all. It's not bad. It's just different. Okay, so we're going to create a hole through. I'm going to do it symmetrically. And we're going to say through wall. And there we have our holes with our little embosses in there. I think that looks cool. I'm okay with that. It's we can enhance it later if we want to. But now we have a conrod. And we have a piston. And I think now we have this guy. I think what we might do, just for interest, so that's 20 across there. So what we might do is we might go back to our piston. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to add a couple of little pads inside the piston, just for aesthetic reasons. I don't like that this is circular, and then we're going to try and put a pin through there to hold the whole thing together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that pocket first, get rid of that sketch, and then I'm going to make sure that the piston is the active body. And now I'm going to create a new sketch, and I'm going to create it on the XY plane, and we'll do a sectional view. And that new sketch is just going to be a square. And I'm going to just dimension it quickly. I'm going to make it 14. And just shift that dimension over there. I'm going to make this 14, or I guess I could just say equal. And then I'm just going to make this dimension down 3. And then finally, I'm going to make this, and this symmetrical. And I'm going to close it. And now to make this a solid part in there, I'm going to just do an offset of this sketch. So I'm going to say this sketch, offset in the Z direction, 25 will get us to there. So we actually probably only want to be 23. And then I'm going to say pad. I'm going to reverse that pad. And I'm just going to take it all the way across to the other side. So let me get that back in the middle so you can see it. And I'm just going to take it all the way across to the other side without breaking through. And looks like that will probably be enough. Okay, that looks perfect. So I'm going to say okay for that. I'm going to do another sketch. I'm going to do it on this plane. Say okay. This one's just going to be another square. It's just going to go around the center point. I'm going to take this point, and the center point, make that symmetrical. I'm going to make this has to be 22, and I'm going to make this one and this one equal. Say close, and I'm going to say pocket, and then I'm just going to pocket until that busts them in half. And there you have it. So now I have two pockets like that, and then I want to put my holes back. And I deleted the holes because it's easier to delete them than to mess about trying to get everything in order. So now I'm just going to put the holes back. The holes are going to be in this plane. Say OK, go into my sectional view, pop my hole in, make sure. Notice the constraint. It's actually this constraint, the one that says fix a point to an object, comes up when I put it on that line. So I want to make sure that happens. Then I'm going to make this big. I'm going to go here. I'm going to dimension that. Remember that was 10. And if you remember, we're going to dimension from this point downwards. So I only have to select one point, and we'll say 10. And there you have it. So now I'm going to close that. And once again, I'm going to pocket. I'm going to say symmetrical through all. And there we have our holes back. But now we have a nice piece to hold either side of the conrod. Now if I turn the conrod back on, and I'm actually going to align it just so we can see what it looks like. So I'll just go back into that conrod original sketch. And instead of that dimension being 60, I'm just going to make it 10. To bring everything down in line with that. Say close. Now you can see the whole thing lining up. It's very interesting. I put a little bit of clearance. I put a 1 mil clearance either side because it's not a good idea to have it jammed on there. So then we might want to make a small end bearing, which is just going to be a 10 millimeter piece of tube that goes this way. If we want to get fancy, we could cut the radius on the end of it. So let's have a look at that. Going to close up my conrod, close up the piston. Just the reason I close these, so this little arrow up and down, this you can see all the component parts. But if you close them, they're nice and neat in order there, so you don't have to see all the internal parts. So I'm going to make another new body. Just yelled at me about something about a sketch. Not sure what that was, but we're all good. This body I'm going to rename. I'm going to call it small end bearing. And simply going to make a drawing on the XY plane. Going to turn all that stuff back on so I can see it. And it's going to be on that line. Then come out to here. I'm just going to dimension that. We'll make it 9.9. So we have a little bit of clearance. And then I'm going to dimension that downwards as 10. So it puts it all in line. And I'm going to say close. And then I'm going to pad that. And this time I'm going to pad it symmetrically. And then I'm going to pad it out until it just pops outside of the piston there. And we can go out by that far. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, OK. So now you can see we have a piston with a pin through it. And if we wanted to, we could have made a hole through that small end bearing. So if we go back there, maybe we'll do that. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll just pop a hole through that little guy. And I'm going to zoom in right in there. And we'll just do this. You know, to make a hole, you just literally draw another circle. And if that one's 9.9, I'm going to make this 6.9. And say close. And now we have a hole all the way through. and it looks beautiful. Now if I wanted to just clean that off at this angle, I could do that. Best way to do that might be I could draw that piece like this and cut it off. Typically you don't do that though, so what I think I'm going to do, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just lessen it until it's just sticking in line with that guy. I think that's more realistic. Now what we could do is we could put an indent on the outside of this. Sometimes they have that on a piston. I certainly could do that if I wanted to, but I don't think I'm going to for this one. Okay, so we have our piston, we have it on a connecting rod, and of course it's not doing much because there's no crankshaft. And so typically there would be a bearing inside this end, but I don't think I'm going to model that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a crankshaft, just so we can see the piston on a crankshaft. So I'm just going to model a crankshaft. It's going to be an offset situation, and we're going to invent it right now. So let's go here, let's create a body, and we're going to rename this body to crankshaft. One of the important things when you are creating multiple pieces to models is to name them in a sensible way so that you know what you're working on. If I just left that as body 1, body 2, body 3, body 4, it gets very confusing very quickly, especially if I add more and more parts to this. So we have to consider what a crankshaft is going to look like and how do we want to model it. It may be easier to model the crankshaft actually on that origin rather than down here, so I think that's what we're probably going to do. I'm going to turn off the piston, turn off the conrod, turn off the small end bearing. Then I'm going to create an XY plane drawing, and I haven't put much thought into how I'm going to create this yet, so I'm going to actually show you how I go about deciding how to do it. If I'd already done it and already decided on all that, it probably wouldn't give you an idea, or wouldn't give you the same feel for what it is I'm doing. So I want to try and help you to get to that. How do I decide how I want to do this kind of thing? So I'm thinking the best way to do it will be to make the crankshaft out of several pieces and just build it as we go. Right now we're a single cylinder, so we really don't need to have a whole lot in our crankshaft. I mean, basically this is the shaft. This is going to be, we said that hole was 20 millimeters, so I'm going to make this 19. And I'm going to close that, and then I'm just going to symmetrically pull that out. And we know it's 20 thick, so I'm going to make that 22. And that would be the first part of the crankshaft. So that's where the big end bearing or the big end of the connecting rod would fit on. And then beyond that, there's going to be a piece on here that is offset. So let's draw something, give you an explanation of what I'm talking about. We go XY plane. I'm going to turn that model back on. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I think the way to go would be to come down here with a sort of semicircular piece. So I'm going to draw another circle. I'm going to use this same tool so I can see the center of this circle, even though it's on the origin. And I'm going to take this circle and I'm going to make it on the same. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to create another circle down here. And I'm going to mess with those two to get the sort of shape that I want. And then I'm going to tangentially join them together. So here's what I'm talking about. I'm going to put that down, slide this guy up. I'm thinking something like that, maybe a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to go a tangent from there to there. And a tangent from there to there. And I want to make this constraint, instead of it being that constraint, I'm going to make it this tangential constraint. So I'm going to delete that constraint there. And I'm going to say that and that are tangential. And I'm going to delete this constraint. And I'm going to say this one and this one are tangential. And now, oh, did I get the wrong one? I must have got the wrong one. Let me just do that again. This one and this one are tangential. There we go. That's the right one. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to cut this guy down a bit. I'm just using the crop tool there just to bring it down. I'm going to crop this guy as well. And then I'm going to go with my radius dimensions. And I know this is 20 something, so I'm going to maybe go to 16, oh, 26, 16. See how that looks. It's too big. It's going to be 30, isn't it? So let's change that. There we go, that's better. And then I'm going to take this guy and say it's 15. That's good. Then I'm going to dimension from here to here. So that's 12. And now I want to make this point and this tangential as well. Okay, let's see what we got. 1 degree of freedom. I'm going to make this and this symmetrical. Oh, got too many guys in there now. Hold on 1 second. Let's get rid of some of those. Let's start that again. This and this are symmetrical. And this and this are symmetrical. And this one here is not actually tangential, is it? Something's not right. Oh, tangency all broke when I just deleted that. So let me just fix all that. That was silly. Tangency. And this guy. This guy with tangency. There we go. And I think it's just that one that's not tangent. Why is this one overhanging? Okay. Let's get rid of that a minute. Let's go with this guy and this guy, oh, this guy, and this guy. Tangency. There we go. And fix my radius again. Good lord. And we're going to go this one and this one are equal. And so what isn't working? So I have that, and now this guy and this guy should be coincident. And then I need to dimension this guy and this guy again. Six. I think we had that more like 12. There you go. That looks better. Okay, and I have some partially redundant stuff in here saying not quite sure what that is. Let's have a look here. Get rid of that one. 1 degree of freedom, which is that guy. And 10 is partially redundant. I don't care about it. I'm gonna leave it. I'm happy. I'm gonna go with that. So now I want that to be on the end, on one of these ends. So I'm gonna offset that sketch in the Z direction. And I made that piece 22, so I'm gonna offset it 11. And now that should be right on the end of there. And I should be able to pad that. And if we make that pad 10, that'll be fine. So, okay. And then if I take this feature and mirror it around the XY plane, I think we are good to go there. So now I have one section of my crankshaft. The next section would have this same guy here, but he'd come out here and come out there. So let's draw that just to get an idea. Let's turn this back on. If anybody knows a way to stop that turning off when I press that, if you can let me know. I don't know of a way. It appears that that's what it does. So not great. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another sketch in the XY plane, and we're going to use this same tool to get the center. We're going to hit that guy. We're going to bring the whole sketch back in. Remember, there's this little guy here. If you hit that, it brings everything back to the center, and then I can just draw my piece here, which I think last time I made that 19, didn't I? And we'll say close. And then of course I don't want it to be there. If I start it there, it's gonna start a piece there. So I need to go and offset. And I know that's 11 and I know that's 10, so I'm gonna offset it 21 in the Z. And then I'm gonna say pad. And I know that pad is 22. And you see where we're going with this. So we're going to have this piece on here. I can take that piece now and mirror it around the XY plane and say OK. And now I have a crankshaft that would work for 3 cylinders. And if I turn all my parts back on, so now that crankshaft would be down here in our engine, and we'd be good to go. So in the next video, we will start assembling this part, or these parts, and we'll work on how to manage this engine as we grow it. What we might actually do is do some piston rings, maybe a cylinder, maybe some valves and an overhead cam and all those pieces. But obviously this video is already long enough, so we're not going to do it here. What we're going to do is we'll do that in the next one, and we'll consider how do we put all these pieces together and put them into an assembly. And then eventually what we'll do is we'll get that assembly to move, we'll put some constraints on it and see if we can get the whole thing moving the way we want it to. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, thumbs up, and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. I'd really appreciate it. Don't forget our Patreon. If you want to join in there, you get early release of videos and the FreeCAD files that go with it. So feel free to leave a comment if you have any comments. If you know how to stop the part switching off every time I do a sketch, you can certainly put that in the comments. I'd be happy to hear that. And then again, if you have any suggestions, if there's things you'd like to see, certainly leave me a comment and I will respond. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.